It started with her asking for help, but the way she looked at me that night, it wasn't the window she needed fixed. It was something inside her, something I didn't realize I was already falling into. It was close to midnight when I heard the knock. Not loud, just enough to make me pause the movie and glance toward the door. 3 soft taps. Hesitant. Then silence. When I opened it, she was there, Maya, my next-door neighbor. Her robe was loosely tied, her hair pulled into a messy knot that still managed to look graceful. The hallway light framed her in gold, casting faint shadows across her cheekbones. She gave me a half-smile, like she wasn't sure if coming here was a mistake. "Sorry for the hour," she said softly, "but my window jammed again. I've tried everything." Her voice carried that mix of frustration and charm only someone sure of themselves could pull off. I nodded quickly, too aware of how the late hour made everything feel more intimate than it should. "No problem. I'll grab my toolkit." Inside her apartment, it smelled faintly of vanilla and something warm, maybe wine, maybe her. The lights were dim, the kind of cozy glow that makes you lower your voice without realizing it. She led me to the living room, where the window refused to budge. I crouched down, trying to focus on the frame instead of how close she stood behind me. She leaned over my shoulder slightly, her breath brushing the back of my neck as she said, "It's been driving me crazy all evening." I smiled without looking back. "You just needed a bit of leverage," I said, pressing the latch. It gave way with a small pop. She laughed, quiet, relieved, genuine. "You make it look easy." When I turned, she was closer than I expected. Close enough that I could see the tiredness behind her eyes, the kind that doesn't come from lack of sleep but from too many nights spent alone. She folded her arms, hugging herself lightly, then caught me watching her and smiled, small, almost shy. "Thank you," she said. "Really. I didn't mean to bother you so late. I just didn't want to be alone with it tonight." The words hung there, not dramatic, not even sad. Just honest. "It's fine," I said quietly. "I get it." She looked at me for a moment longer, like she was trying to read something in my face. Then she stepped back, motioning toward the kitchen. "Coffee? Or, maybe you'd rather sleep?" I hesitated. I should have said good night. But there was something about the way she waited for my answer, calm, yet hopeful, that made walking away feel impossible. "Coffee sounds good," I said. She smiled again, softer this time. "Okay. Black or with sugar? Surprise me." And just like that, I found myself standing in her quiet kitchen past midnight, watching her pour coffee into 2 mismatched mugs. The sound of the rain outside, the flicker of the kitchen light, the faint scent of her perfume, it all wrapped around the moment like it was meant to happen. That night, I didn't know it yet, but nothing about our lives would stay the same after that knock. The coffee steamed between us, its quiet warmth filling the silence that lingered after her half-smile faded. We sat across from each other at her kitchen table, a small wooden thing covered in a few open books, a candle, and a vase that had lost most of its flowers. Outside, the rain had started again. Slow, rhythmic drops against the window. It gave the moment a kind of heartbeat. She looked tired, not physically, but somewhere deeper. Her robe had slipped slightly off her shoulder, and when she noticed, she adjusted it with a faint, embarrassed laugh. "Guess I didn't plan on company tonight," she said. I smiled softly. "Neither did I." For a few seconds, we said nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator, the soft patter of rain, and the clink of her spoon stirring sugar into her cup. Then she looked up, eyes thoughtful. "Do you ever get those nights where the silence feels too heavy?" she asked. "Like it's pressing against the walls?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah. More often than I'd like to admit." She exhaled, a small, relieved sound. I thought it was just me. Her words came out half laughing, half confessing, and then she leaned back, tracing the rim of her cup with a finger. It's been one of those weeks, she continued. One of those months, actually. Everything's fine on paper, the job, the house, the people who text to check in. But none of it feels enough. There was no self-pity in her tone. Just honesty. She looked at me then, directly, almost challengingly. You're young. You probably think I'm being dramatic. I shook my head. No. I think you're being real. She smiled faintly, but her eyes softened. You remind me of someone I used to know. He listened the same way, like every word mattered. Something in my chest tightened. Maybe every word does. The room went still for a heartbeat. And then she laughed again, not forced, but raw. God, you're too serious, she teased. Maybe I just need a good laugh. Or a good, she paused, letting the sentence dangle, lay. The word hung in the air between us, electric and bold, yet somehow sad underneath. Her eyes flicked up to mine, testing, daring me to react. I smiled, not because I found it funny, but because I could tell she wanted to break the tension. That's one way to handle a rough week, I said lightly. She laughed, shaking her head. I was joking. Mostly. Her expression softened, though, as she leaned her chin on her hand. You know, sometimes I say things like that just to hear someone answer back. To feel like someone's still listening. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't. I just looked at her, and she looked back, the silence between us fuller now, warmer somehow. Outside, thunder rolled low in the distance. She sighed quietly. You've got kind eyes, she murmured. That's dangerous. Dangerous? I asked. She smiled again, that small, tired smile that felt like the truth. Yeah, she whispered. Because they make me want to stay in this moment a little too long. And I didn't tell her, not yet, that I was already thinking the same thing. The next morning, I told myself it was just a neighborly thing, helping Maya with a few repairs around her apartment. Nothing more. But even as I knocked on her door again, part of me knew it wasn't just about fixing things anymore. She opened the door wearing jeans and a faded gray t-shirt, her hair loosely tied back. No makeup, no perfume, just her. And somehow, that made her even harder to look away from. You're early, she said, smiling faintly as she stepped aside to let me in. I was just about to make coffee. Again. Then I'm right on time, I said, setting my toolbox on the floor. She chuckled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I can't believe you're actually doing this. Most guys your age would have found an excuse not to come back. Maybe I'm not most guys. Her eyes flicked over me, curious. We'll see about that. There was something playful in her tone, but also a quiet caution, like she was testing where the line was, and whether I'd cross it. We started with the loose kitchen shelf. She stood close, holding the board steady while I screwed it back in place. Every time our hands brushed, she pretended not to notice, but I could feel her breath slow, her shoulders tense just slightly. Do you do this for a living? She asked, trying to fill the silence. Fixing things. She nodded. No. I'm studying architecture. But I like using my hands. She tilted her head, half smiling. That explains a lot. I glanced at her. What does that mean? She shrugged, her eyes sparkling with a tease she didn't finish. Nothing. Just. I can see it. You pay attention to detail. For a while, we worked in quiet rhythm, her holding, me adjusting, both pretending we weren't aware of how close we'd gotten. When I reached for another screw, she moved at the same time, and our fingers touched again. This time, neither of us pulled away. Something shifted, small, but undeniable. She cleared her throat softly. "You're good at this. At fixing shelves. At showing up," she said quietly. "Most people don't." Her tone caught me off guard. She wasn't flirting. She was just being honest again, the way she had been last night. Vulnerable without meaning to be. I wanted to tell her I wasn't here out of pity, or curiosity. That I liked being around her, the way she filled silence with small, unspoken warmth. But the words felt too heavy, too early. Instead, I smiled. "Guess I'm just stubborn like that." She laughed under her breath, shaking her head. "You might regret it. I could put you to work every weekend." "Deal," I said before I could stop myself. When she looked up at me again, her eyes lingered just a little longer than before. There it was, that quiet understanding. The kind that doesn't need words because both people already know. As I packed up my tools, she stood by the counter, holding her coffee mug like she needed something to do with her hands. "You know," she said softly, "I think you're trouble." "Maybe," I said, smiling. "But I fix things, remember?" She laughed, really laughed this time, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like the first ray of sunlight breaking through after a long, gray storm. The storm rolled in without warning. 1 minute, sunlight poured through Maya's living room, the next, the sky cracked open in a flash of lightning. The power cut out almost immediately, leaving the room in heavy silence, the kind that makes every heartbeat sound louder. "Perfect timing," she murmured, standing near the window. "Looks like the universe wants me to light some candles." I offered to help, but she waved me off gently, rummaging through a drawer until she found a half-melted candle and a lighter. The flicker cast soft gold light across her face, dancing over her cheekbones and tracing shadows along her collarbone. "Guess you're stuck here until it passes," she said with a faint smile. "I don't mind," I replied, meaning it more than I should have. We sat across from each other on the couch, the kind of closeness that makes you aware of every small movement. Outside, the rain fell harder, tapping against the windows like 1,000 quiet knocks. The thunder rolled again, deeper this time, and she flinched slightly. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, forcing a small smile. "Yeah. Just, storms make me remember things I'd rather forget." She stared into the candle flame for a moment, her voice quieter now. "When my ex left, it was a night like this. Power out, rain everywhere. He just packed his bag, said he needed something different." Her laugh was soft, but bitter at the edges. "Funny thing, isn't it? He didn't say someone younger. But he didn't have to." I didn't say anything, not because I didn't know what to say, but because sometimes silence listens better than words. She leaned back, exhaling slowly. "You reach a certain age, and people stop seeing you. You become the background in your own life, the responsible one, the safe one, the one who doesn't get chosen anymore." I looked at her, the candlelight trembling in her eyes. "You're not invisible," I said quietly. She smiled, almost sadly. "Maybe not to you." The room went still again. The rain softened, but the tension didn't. She tucked her legs under her, drawing the blanket closer, and for a moment, she looked years younger, not because of her face, but because she wasn't hiding anything anymore. I moved closer, not touching her, just enough that she could feel I was there. "You deserve someone who stays," I said. She glanced at me, eyes glistening faintly. "You say that like you mean it." "I do." She studied me for a long moment, like she was deciding whether to believe me. Then, with a soft sigh, she whispered, you really shouldn't look at me that way. What way? Like I'm still something worth wanting. The words hit deeper than she realized. I didn't respond, I just stayed there, close enough for her to feel that she wasn't alone. The thunder rumbled again, but it sounded distant now. She leaned her head on the back of the couch, eyes half closed, whispering, "Thank you for staying." I smiled faintly. "You don't have to thank me." Her voice was barely a breath. "Maybe I do." And for the first time that night, she didn't hide behind humor or pride. She just sat there, illuminated by the soft candlelight, open, real, and heartbreakingly human. The storm had quieted to a whisper. The candles burned lower, casting a soft amber glow that made the room feel smaller, warmer, almost private. Maya sat beside me on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her knees drawn up slightly. The space between us felt alive. She hadn't said much since her confession, and neither had I. The silence wasn't awkward, it was heavy, charged, like we were both waiting for something neither of us could name. Outside, the rain turned into a soft drizzle. The faint scent of wet earth mixed with her perfume, jasmine and something deeper I couldn't place. I found myself staring at her hands, the way her fingers traced the rim of her mug without realizing it. "Are you cold?" I asked softly. She shook her head. "No. Just thinking." "About?" Her lips curved into a faint smile. "About how easy it is to talk to you. And how dangerous that might be." "Dangerous?" I repeated. She looked at me, eyes searching mine. "Because I can forget things with you. The rules I've built for myself. The ones that keep me safe." I swallowed, the air suddenly too thick. "Maybe those rules aren't meant to last forever." She let out a quiet laugh. Spoken like someone who's never had to rebuild themselves. Her voice softened. "I envy that." The candle flickered between us, the flame stretching higher, then shrinking again. I could see the reflection of it in her eyes, and before I could stop myself, I whispered, "You're not the only one who's been rebuilding." She blinked, as if she hadn't expected that answer. "What did you lose?" "Time," I said. "And people who didn't know how to stay." Her gaze softened. "That sounds familiar." For a while, we just sat there, breathing in sync. The kind of stillness where even small movements felt like choices. Then she shifted closer, her hand brushing my arm, light as air, but enough to send a rush through me. "Sometimes," she whispered, "I wonder if I make everything too complicated." I met her eyes. "I don't think you do." She hesitated, then reached up to tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear, her fingers trembling slightly. "You can say stop," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "If this feels wrong." It didn't. But I couldn't move, not yet. Instead, I reached out, gently brushing a strand of her hair back, my knuckles grazing her cheek. She closed her eyes, leaning ever so slightly into the touch. Time seemed to stretch between heartbeats. When she opened her eyes again, the distance between us was barely inches. Her breath trembled against my skin. It wasn't a kiss. Not quite. But it was everything that leads up to one, the pause, the pull, the shared silence where words no longer fit. And then she exhaled, pulling back just slightly, her lips curving into something that looked like both regret and relief. "We should stop," she said softly. I nodded, but neither of us moved away. The candle flickered again, and she whispered, "You make it very hard to remember where the line is." I smiled faintly. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." She looked at me for a long moment, then whispered, "Good night." But even as she stood and the flame dimmed, I knew the night wasn't over. Not really. Something between us had changed, something we couldn't pretend away anymore, the night had faded into a pale, early morning hush. The storm was gone, leaving the world damp and quiet, as if even nature was catching its breath. I hadn't slept. Neither had she. Maya sat at her kitchen counter in a loose cardigan, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. Her hair was messy, her eyes softer than usual, a kind of vulnerable peace I hadn't seen before. We hadn't crossed the line, but it felt as though we both stood at the edge and seen what waited beyond it. And somehow, that was more intimate than anything else could have been. "Did you get any sleep?" I asked, breaking the silence gently. She smiled faintly, not looking up. "A little." "You?" "Not really." "Thought so." Her voice was calm, but there was a tremor beneath it, the residue of everything unspoken from the night before. The air between us was softer now, stripped of tension but full of meaning. She finally looked at me. "You didn't have to stay, you know." "After last night, I wanted to," I said simply. She blinked, the corner of her mouth tugging into something like a smile. "You really don't know how to make things easy, do you?" "I'm not trying to make them hard either." Her laugh was quiet, tired but warm. "You have a way of saying things that sound simple but aren't." For a moment, we just watched each other, the kind of silence that doesn't demand filling. Then she said softly, "I didn't mean to make things complicated. She paused, exhaling. "It's been a long time since I felt seen. That's all." I leaned back, studying her face. "You deserve to be seen. Not because of what you've been through, but because of who you are." Her eyes shimmered, but she looked away, smiling as if she didn't trust herself to believe it. "You sound too sure of that." "I am," I said. "Completely." Something shifted then. She set her mug down and leaned her elbows on the counter, her chin resting on her hand. "You know, last night scared me a little." "Why?" "Because I wanted to kiss you," she said quietly. "And that felt dangerous." The words lingered like the faint scent of rain, impossible to ignore. I smiled gently. "I wanted to kiss you too." She looked at me for a long moment, eyes shining. "And yet, we didn't." "Maybe because it would have been too easy," I said. "And what's happening between us isn't supposed to be easy." Her laugh came soft, almost a whisper. "You're wiser than your age suggests." I shrugged. "Or maybe I just know what's real when I feel it." She exhaled slowly, then reached across the counter and placed her hand over mine. Her skin was warm, steady, grounding. "You're dangerous too, you know that." I smiled. "So they tell me." The morning light poured through the window, spilling across her face. It painted her in gold, soft, unguarded, and entirely human. She squeezed my hand once before letting go. "Whatever this is," she said, "I'm not sure what it means yet." "Then let's not label it," I said. "Let's just see where it goes." Her smile widened, quiet and knowing. "You make it sound simple again." "Maybe it is." And as the first real sunlight broke across the room, I realized that what we shared wasn't confusion, it was clarity. Not a rush towards something forbidden, but a slow realization that something true had begun. That it had been a few days since that morning. Life moved forward, quietly but not the same. The storm had passed, but its memory stayed with me, the warmth of candlelight, her voice in the dark, the almost kiss we both still felt lingering in the air. I saw Maya a few times in the hallway that week, short exchanges, polite smiles, a shared glance that lasted just a second too long. She was cautious again, as if the closeness we'd shared scared her more than it comforted her. I understood. Some walls take years to build, and she had learned to live safely behind hers. Still, something in her eyes told me the wall had cracked. It was a Saturday afternoon when she knocked on my door. Not the hesitant, midnight kind of knock from before, this one was steady, certain. I opened it to find her standing there, sunlight spilling across her hair, a small nervous smile playing at her lips. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey. Hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Not at all," I said. "You want to come in?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Actually, I was hoping we could talk. Outside, maybe." We ended up walking down to the small garden behind our building. The grass was still damp from last night's rain. She wore a cream sweater and jeans, simple but beautiful in a way that made my chest tighten. For a while, neither of us spoke. The quiet wasn't awkward, it was heavy with everything waiting to be said. Finally, she stopped and turned to me. "You've been patient," she said. "More than I deserve." "You don't have to earn patience," I said. "You just have to be honest." She smiled at that, a real one this time. "Then here's my honesty," she said quietly. "The night of the storm. I wanted to kiss you. And every day since, I've thought about what would have happened if I had." My heart thudded. And she took a step closer. And I realized it wouldn't have been a mistake. But I also realized I was scared, not of you, but of what it meant to want something again. To feel something real. I exhaled slowly, watching the sunlight move across her face. "I'm scared too," I admitted. "But that doesn't make it wrong." Her eyes softened. "You're younger. You could have someone easier, simpler." I shook my head. "I don't want easier. I want you." The words hung there, simple, raw, undeniable. She blinked, and I saw her walls fall away completely for the first time. She took another step forward until she was close enough for me to feel her breath. "Last time, I asked for help," she whispered. "This time, I just want you." I reached for her hand, fingers intertwining naturally, like they'd been waiting to fit together all along. There was no rush, no spark meant to burn out, just warmth, quiet and steady. The kind that felt like home. She looked up at me, smiling through tears she didn't bother to hide. "This feels right," she said softly. I smiled back. "It is." And in that quiet garden, beneath a sun that finally felt like spring, we closed the space between us, not in desperation, but in peace. It wasn't the beginning of something wild. It was the start of something real, two people choosing to stay, without needing to pretend anymore. If you felt this story, their hesitation, their honesty, hit that like button and subscribe for more slow burn romances that linger long after they end. Sometimes, love doesn't arrive with fireworks, it arrives softly, and stays.